in, kind of, and welcome to the Anglo-Italian pod. It is time for the Monday Night Euro review show. We are back. As always, my name is Rory, and I'm joined by my very good friend,
Adam. Hey, Rory. Yeah, it does feel a long time since we did this podcasting and live stream malarkey. And I was reminded this weekend that you cannot celebrate anything these days because Liverpool fans will have it in for you anyway. But more importantly, mate, how are things in Milan?
I'm surprised you only learned that lesson this week. We've been learning it the entire season. They invented everything. You know that, right? Anything you've done, they did it first and they did it better. You should know this by now, Adam. No, I'm good. I'm good. It's beautiful in Milan at the minute. Super hot. So yeah, summer's on its way. Obviously, this weekend was a complete shit show. We're going to get onto it. Both of these bastards letting me down this weekend. But we will be getting onto it. How was your weekend?
Wasn't too bad. It was kind of getting warmer here in the UK as well. So it was a bit more blustery, I think, in comparison to what I've seen across Europe, because it feels like it's 30s or getting into the mid 20s now for majority of Europe compared to here, which is we're like 12 degrees. Let's get the barbecues out. Let's do it. So it's pleasant.
It's been absolutely cracking. But yeah, lots of football to discuss. Obviously, big weekend in the title race in England. We'll be covering Liverpool, Arsenal, and of course, Manchester City a little bit. We'll be talking about Burnley's goalkeeping woes continue. So close, just can't quite get there. We're talking about Tottenham and Newcastle. That is a part of the weekend I really enjoyed. One of the few games I watched. I'm glad I did. Elsewhere in Serie A, of course, we have the race for the top four continuing. Milan scrapping for second place. Inter continuing. The dream is still alive. Monday night is now as big as ever. And we'll be talking about the relegation battle as Sassuolo finally have discovered their scoring boots, really. It looks like this. They can't stop scoring at the minute. They can't keep them out at the other end, but they can't stop scoring at the minute. So we'll be talking about them as well. Well, let's start, I suppose, with the Premier League. And I think let's go for red tears. Lots of red tears this weekend. I'm going to delay Arsenal and let's talk about Liverpool first, even as, chronologically that happened first, right?
Exactly, right.
Optimistic, but quiet on Twitter and social media. I was sure not to say anything. I was like, don't say anything because Arsenal have to play later. And I'm glad I didn't talk now. But with Liverpool, we need to talk, of course, about Crystal Palace. Glasner's first away win since he's taken over at Crystal Palace. Only Crystal Palace's third win away this season, I think. Absolutely huge, but this is only the fifth time that Elise and Eze have played together this season in the Premier League. Adam, was that the difference? Before we get onto Mateta and how much I'm falling in love with him, was the difference Eze and Elise? Is it that simple?
It's certainly helpful to have those two around, isn't it? And you kind of saw if you didn't see the match, just the highlights of the fact that between the two, there's always something that was kind of ready to get going, really. If it was just a one-touch move or whether it was just them running at Liverpool, you felt that something was going to get developed. And it was interesting the way that kind of Crystal Palace went about the patterns of play. It certainly felt a bit more fluid than previous games. So clearly Glasner is starting to get a feeling for his team, and maybe he's starting to implement what we saw at Frankfurt with Glasner and starting to bring that into this team. But I think it was evident for me, Rory, that I felt that Liverpool were rocked by the results in midweek against Atalanta. We were purring about that result on that Thursday night, which we were unfortunate not able to actually record on that evening. But I'm glad I didn't, because I got to see the masterclass of Atalanta against Liverpool, which was delightful to watch. It just felt like Liverpool's confidence has been rocked ever since that Man United result in the league. And ever since then, it feels like they've just really not been able to control the games as they've used to. And I've been trying to dig in a bit more detail. And it feels like just even from a point of view of in front of goal, they're just lacking that kind of confidence. And I don't know how you felt, but despite Liverpool in the second half having a lot more opportunities against this Crystal Palace side, and you could argue that Crystal Palace were hanging by the ends by the point of the 90th minute. However, they did resolutely do quite well. And it felt like Liverpool just didn't really have that kind of confidence in front of goal. Even when you saw Curtis Jones' effort in particular, for example, where he's one-on-one and you expect him to at least dink it over the keeper, he just fails to do so. I mean, at that moment, probably you would have felt, right, this is the end of Liverpool's kind of title surge. I mean, do you feel the wheels are coming off at Liverpool? Because I certainly do.
I think it's interesting because with Liverpool, there was a lot of parallels to be drawn with Arsenal last year, right? It's a team that nobody really expected to be challenging. They were obviously outperforming what people expected. And there was this huge wave of emotion once Klopp said that he was going to leave, right? And it was leveled at Arsenal the whole year last year that it's too emotional, it can't last. Once emotions get involved, once the bubble bursts, it all collapses. And Arsenal fans, including myself, the whole time, we're going, no, there's no such thing as too emotional. This is that we care, we're on it, we're riding a wave, it's going to take us all the way. And then it fell apart, right? And I feel like Liverpool, the same thing is happening. This whole thing of Klopp's farewell, and it's just become a bit much. And because the second it starts to go against you with that draw at Man United, when by all accounts they should have won, right? They scored, they had so many shots, so many chances, and you start to maybe that doubt creeps in. You go, okay, we're not scoring. And the next game you don't score, you get embarrassed at home by Atalanta, and you think, okay, what's happening here? And then all of a sudden that big progress you've built with the emotion just pops and it all kind of falls down. Now, I think I'm not going to say that Liverpool are just going to do nothing from here. Klopp and those players are more than good enough to be able to turn this around. The big thing is they've got to go to Bergamo on Thursday, right? And they're kind of on a hide into nothing. But you could also say they have no pressure, right? They can go in and just try and score, see what happens. If you turn it around, it's monumental. If you don't, oh well, we weren't expected to. We fucked it in the first leg. But I think what's really interesting about this is the fact that Liverpool, this was a full strength team. Like the whole season we've been talking, and rightly so, Liverpool fans have highlighted how many injuries they've had, right? Alisson's been out, Jota's been out, like Canate, whoever, there's lots of players out. But once all these players, they've got the front three that they wanted, or they could pick the front three specifically for that game. They had their midfield back. They had their back five back, right? There's Szoboszlai in there, but they had like Alisson in goal, and they've got a Trent at right back, everything that you want. And the performance just wasn't as good as the games when they've had players like, Kwanzaa or whoever else, right? And it maybe felt like they came into that game and thought, okay, we're full strength. It's Palace at home. We can do, we'll do this. Don't worry about it. And I kind of got the same feeling against, with United, the amount of chances they had, their attitude seemed to be, oh, don't worry, there'll be another one. There'll be another one. Then they just wasn't anymore. I feel like that kind of happened here as well, where even though they were panicking and rushing at the end, there was still that attitude of like, oh, well, if we miss this one, there's the next one.
There's the next one,
It doesn't help that Darwin Núñez had one of his games that he can have, right? We know what type of player he is, where he just bounces off his knee, his touch isn't right, he misses that chance. Sure. Like he had a bad day at the office, but so did a lot of players. I think Salah was really disappointing. I think his season, obviously his numbers are still very good, but his season has been quite disappointing overall, especially post AFCON. I feel like he's just not been as good, which again is understandable. He's been playing football consistently for 3 years now. I think it is like non-stop. But I feel like it feels like this Liverpool team are just running out of steam a little bit. They're just getting a bit leggy, and it's catching up with them. But I don't want to not give Palace credit, because I think
100%.
The move for their goal is honestly some of the best football I've seen in the Premier League this year. Like the one touch passing, the spins on the ball, the triangles, like everything, and you're like,
it's how Eze glides again, just seamlessly. He just melts, doesn't he?
I could watch him forever. Honestly, I could watch him forever.
I'm mind boggled by how no one picks him up, and I was so used to seeing him as a 17-year-old at Wickham do the same thing.
I can imagine he was still doing it. Yeah.
I was just like, how is he getting away with this still at that level? He's just amazing. But I think it also helps that he's got someone like Will Hughes, who actually has been identified as the catalyst for the last few results, where he's been holding that midfield. Adam Wharton's getting a bit more praise now and getting his flowers as well. I think he's looking like the promise of the kids that they spent 30 million from Blackburn Rovers. So again, he's looking good, and we love Anderson at the back as well. He really did have a great performance as well. But Rory, to that move, that was beautiful.
It was incredible.
Beautiful.
It was honestly incredible. And I think that it was just, I think if that's what Glasner can already coach with players that aren't his and with a team that he will want to do a lot of work on, right? There's still a lot. But if he can coach that and get that already, I think this is a really, really exciting appointment for Palace. And I think Nathaniel Klein playing in a back three as a centre-back is not a thing I saw coming, but he played incredibly well. Obviously, Joachim Anderson, we know, just incredible, really, really good, solid defender, decent ball player. And then Jefferson Lerma as a centre-back as well. He's getting the versatility out of the players and the amount he's been able to coach them in this role already, I just think is really, really impressive. Adam Wharton, I thought was fantastic. Eze and Olise, the second they're back in the team, Palace looks so much better. And Mateta, I love the chaos of him. You never really know what he's going to do. But again, since Glasner's come in, he's picked up a few goals. He's got a few goals. He's getting on the score sheet a bit more. I think Glasner can maybe get a bit more out of him as that target man if you build in the right attacking players around him. Obviously, it helps when you've got Eze and Elise with the quality of ball they can deliver and the speed with which they progress the ball. But if you've got him as a main focal point, he is clumsy. He's very, very clumsy. And in a one-to-one, I wouldn't trust him. But I think as a target man, he could really do a job.
I think he combines both that target man element that you mentioned, but he's also got that pace, directness about him as well. You saw he was unlucky with not scoring himself with the effort that got cleared off the line by Andrew Robertson. He's been proving that in the few games beforehand as well. Even that defeat against Man City, he caused them issues there in that particular match. So he's proving a lot of people, including myself, who thought that he wasn't good enough as a target man for Palace. And maybe he's just getting the better or best out of him with the style of play as well. Because I think under Hodgson, we kind of saw Mateta kind of float in and out of games, but he was kind of either substituted for Edouard or someone else, for example. And he wasn't really necessarily getting the best out of that performance from Mateta. So, again, plaudits to him for the way he went about it. But fantastic performance by Palace. And their fans deserve to actually celebrate that, Liverpool fans. I saw a lot of that bullshit online about how they're not allowed to even kind of celebrate and they should be given them a bit more praise around. I don't know. But it was really strange how Liverpool fans have kind of turned really sour over this situation as well.
Yeah, well, I think there was a lot of coping yesterday. I think there was a lot of coping yesterday, and a lot of just anger at the sky. Just really, 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 really a lot of anger yesterday. But I think, Liverpool fans. Twitter is a hellhole anyway, and Twitter fans are amongst the worst. But I think Liverpool fans are usually quite bad for policing things. But anyway. Awful result for Liverpool, no two ways about it. They have to try and bounce back now with this performance against Atalanta, and then see what challenge they can mount to kind of put pressure on Man City, which is basically where Arsenal now find themselves. Yesterday was horrible. I found that my best way of dealing with this title race has been to kind of go out for the games. I've not been watching the games massively. I've decided to still do things on my weekend. I've been if I can watch the game, I can watch it because I just can't deal with it at the moment. And I did sit and watch the second half on the train back from our day trip yesterday.
Okay.
I caught the worst half. I watched the highlights of the first half and then refused to watch the highlights of the second half. But before we get onto Aston Villa, and I am going to credit them a lot, for Arsenal, on any other day, we win that game in the first half. Trossard has a chance that he should have scored. Gabriel Jesus needs to be more clinical. We were creating chances. Everything was looking all right. It was, okay, as long as we continue to do this, eventually the goal will come. Because we were getting in a lot of times. It took a great save from Emi Martinez as well. We had a few opportunities. That being said, Ollie Watkins did also hit the post on the break in the first half. So we were lucky not to go 1-0 down. But I think overall, from the first half, having watched it now and keeping up with the live blog when I was out, I thought, okay, we're not playing badly. We're doing all right. The second half, I don't know what happens. I think I just don't know what happens. Aston Villa come out and they just absolutely dominate from 45 to 90. There was not a moment we were in that game. I can't count the amount of corners they had. I can't count the amount of crosses they put into the box, how many times they managed to get us running back at our own goal. It was just seriously impressive what they did. I think Emery, after the game, came out and said, I didn't really change anything. We just kind of went, just keep doing what you're doing and you'll be fine. What I thought they did was drop a little bit deeper with their defense because Kai Havertz was getting through a lot on runs.
Yeah, sure.
But then they just completely dominated the midfield. Like, I thought Declan Rice had a really bad day. Ødegaard was I have to give roses to Ødegaard because he was unplayable, but he was the only player that turned up. But I think Aston Villa just bombarded us constantly. And this is with a midfield that's missing Kamara and Douglas Luiz, right? It was an incredibly well-coached Aston Villa team with 2 days less rest than we had after their game, right? And they just ran and they caused us problems. I thought Zaniolo was fantastic. He was a constant threat against Ben White along down the left. He was causing him all sorts of problems. When Diaby came off and Bailey came on, I thought, well, he's scoring. And he did. I thought Ollie Watkins, before I get to the Arsenal aspects of the goal, that finish was fantastic. The run is perfectly timed from his own half. I was praying for a flag for offside, but he ran from his own half. Incredible run from him. 19 goals now, no penalties and 10 assists. I think who was the player? It was Emiliano Martinez, wasn't it? Who said after the game he should be in the conversation for Player of the Year. Absolutely. I think what Emery has managed to do with his team. Now, obviously, they went through that rough patch. This was a huge, huge win for them. And the Aston Villa fans, you could see they enjoyed it. Like they knew how big it was. With Spurs losing, them getting that win is absolutely massive. And this is like Emery. That was a masterclass from him, right? I'm going to talk about Arteta, but that was a masterclass from Emery.
Yeah, Emery completely dominated this fixture again. So he's done the double over you guys. He understood what he needed to do on each occasion. But I think the difference was that he kind of didn't let the emotional side get to him. I felt like that was the bit that Arsenal struggled with yesterday. There were certain players that for example, Saka again, not turning up for this match was quite an eye-opener. I thought he would be really excited and maybe trying to take on his man a lot more than he actually did. He really struggled in this match, but credit to also Villa and the way that they kind of went about it. You mentioned in the first half that they struggled pretty much because they let Arsenal have a lot of their possession, for example, but actually Diego Carlos, should I say, absolutely dominated his duels. And even when there was one or two occasions where he was dragged out, there was a lot of people that were covering. For example, I thought Tielemans had a really good game overall in that middle of the park as well. Morgan Rogers looks like he's a bit of a player that can take players and create space. That's the thing that I always liked about him from that Middlesbrough kind of exposure that he had against Chelsea. I think it was earlier in the season in the FA Cup as well. He's got something about him. And it was interesting, obviously, the tactics that Emery did deploy, playing Zaniolo, who wasn't really much fancied, giving Leon Bailey a rest, because I think he realised that had he started with Leon Bailey, they would have probably man-marked him out of the game, whereas Zaniolo gave them a bit something different to kind of think about, really. So I thought he really did approach it in the right manner anyway. And Konsa was a really good player as well, obviously forming on that right-hand side. But as you rightly allude to, this wasn't their full-strength Villa side. There was a lot of players that were on that bench or injured, should I say, that probably would be considered for this first 11. So it was strange how Arsenal really struggled, given the context of what happened a few hours ago as well. And this was the opportunity. And I feel like after that result, it was almost like a defeatist attitude in the air, because although, you look at the table now, there's still everything to play for, right? You are still hoping that Man City will slip up. And I think there's still a possibility that there's still going to be more twists and turns, believe it or not. I think it's not going to be a foregone conclusion. I think something will happen with City, especially with the fact that they're trying to maintain. You've got the FA Cup next weekend, for example, for City, and you've got the Champions League midweek. So there's a lot to go on in that respect. And, you only need one major injury to, say, Rodri, for example, for a Man City perspective. That changes how that all goes about it. But it doesn't help that Man City emphatically displayed what they did against Luton, and that's the other aspect. It was against Luton, but I think if you look at their run, it's more favourable than say Arsenal's run at the moment, because you've still got the North London derby, you've still got Man United away, for example, last day of the season. If you need something against Everton, who might be needing points themselves, it's really difficult, isn't it? So I still think there's lots of twists and turns. It's just annoying, I think, from your point of view, that it feels like it's a repeat of last season's collapse. This moment feels like it.
I think, look, like last year, there are differences. Last year, we lost against Southampton. This year, we've lost about Aston Villa, who are going to finish in the top 4. I think they are a very, very, very good team. Like, this isn't... This was always a game that when we looked at the list, we thought Villa at home is not going to be a walk in the park, right? Like, no way. So I think... not to make excuses, we should have played better, but it was always a game that was going to be tricky. I think it's funny because I've talked to a few people today who are looking at the title race from the outside in, and they're like, "Mate, there's still loads to play. Like, what are you like?" But for Arsenal, Liverpool fans this weekend, it's just been like, right, gone, because we know that now. Sorry, I expect City to win every game. Like, I know, like, historically, they're terrible against Spurs, right? And Fulham away has been a very difficult place. Like, they've beaten Liverpool there, they've beaten United there, they've beaten Arsenal there, they've pulled off a lot of big results, right? I know that Brighton away is potentially tricky, like, but every game I expect City to win now. And I think what we could afford to have one loss, I think. Like, looking at, we would a minimum have to win 7 of the 8 games left. Well, now we have to win 7 of the 7. Like, we have no choice but to do that now. So I think it's just the margin. Our margin for error has gone. So now there can be no more errors, and that's where the issue lies. And I think my last bit on Arsenal here, I suppose, is Arteta. I think he got this one wrong. I think he got this one wrong in many different ways. Now, personally, I wouldn't have started Zinchenko at left back. He's not been in the greatest form. No. And up against a player like Moussa Diaby and then later Bailey, he's a player that we know the ball over the top. He's very vulnerable to.
Susceptible, yeah.
And he's a very risky player. He takes a lot of risks, which is a big advantage of his game. But Arteta's whole thing this year has been don't take risks. Control. And he was terrible yesterday. He lost the tackle where Tielemans hit the crossbar on the post.
Yeah.
He was so terrified of getting beaten from the ball over the top that he dropped deep when all the defenders were up, meaning that Liverpool, and it just meant, not Liverpool, it meant Villa were able to push forward. Our defenders leaned back. He just lost his discipline completely. Now, I know that Kivior had a torrid time against Sané, for Bayern Munich. He did struggle. I personally, and I don't know if it's a fitness issue, but I would be having Tomiyasu at left back every game now for the rest of the season. Tomiyasu and Kivior to shore it up if we're in a good position, right? Because I think Kivior was still, when we were solid, he was fantastic. I just think Bayern Munich was a bridge too far for him. But I think Arteta should have picked Tomiyasu. Last thing, is also he waited too long with the substitutions. He waited far too long with the substitutions. Expecting Smith Rowe and Jorginho to come on with 10 minutes left and affect the game and then throw in on Nketiah at the end. I feel like when Emery reacted and brought on Bailey and kind of made these changes, Arteta was he froze, I think. So I think it's a big learning curve for him as well. And the thing is, as I've said a million times, this team learns. He learns. We will eventually get there. We're just not there yet. And so I feel like Arteta really dropped the ball on this one, unfortunately, and Zinchenko's time at Arsenal might be over, honestly.
I think it is. On that Kivior point, I would say Kivior is still a squad player for me. Yeah. He's a player that you can bring in for certain games, and yes, he will do a job. And I think he has proved that he's starting to step up his ability in that respect. But he's not there to compete against a Leroy. He doesn't know how to deal with a pacier player that's more direct.
He's not a left back. He's a centre back.
He's not. He's not a centre back in Serie A. So he always plays in a three at the back, for example. So yeah, and even with Poland, he's played or deployed as a 3-man defense as well. So he's one of those that he can run forward, right? He's proved that he can be quite quick and he can get those balls quite quickly into the spaces or get crossing, for example. But yeah, he's not at that ability yet, and that's what I think is a bit strange about Arteta, that he never really has found out what the best kind of, I suppose, gap, what is the best solution. And I would have thought he would have seen this a bit more better in terms of how he was going to approach it. I think he should have gone with a back three personally yesterday. He should have gone with that, and then with wing backs. But like you, I wouldn't have gone with Zinchenko. I would have gone with, obviously, Tomiyasu seems like the only option at this moment in time, because he's not going to go with Tierney, is he? And he can't call Tierney up anyway. So I think that's my point.
I think all of a sudden, the market is looking like a striker is very, very low on the list of priorities of what we need. We need a left back, we need a midfielder, we need another goalkeeper because Ramsdale's going to go, and we need a winger. So I think a striker is getting further and further down the line. But the problem is that Gabriel Jesus just isn't clinical enough. I think I love him as a player. He is fantastic to watch. I would have him as a winger, like City did. I just don't think he's clinical enough to be a striker. He can't be your main striker. There's 3 or 4 chances in the first half there. And even against Bayern Munich, there was a few where he should have scored. And you're like, again, another mistake Arteta made. When we played away to Aston Villa, I think Kai Havertz played as the main striker, and he caused them all sorts of problems where on another day we score. Without VAR, we get an equalizer, right? Like, because I'm still not sure about that decision. But without sounding like a United fan in the offside call, like, I think on another day we score there. And I don't know if it was worth Arteta rejigging the whole team just to fit Gabriel Jesus in there. I don't think that that change paid off. And I don't think it was necessary. I think we could have just stuck with Havertz, maybe start Martinelli instead of Trossard, because Trossard is good off the bench. I understand Trossard's worked his way into the team, but I probably would have started Martinelli and then Saka. But I didn't think you needed to make that many changes. But again, last thing, it's interesting how quickly this team is moving on, because Zinchenko came in and he helped us raise the level so much. But now this team has gone past him. And arguably, this team has gone past Gabriel Jesus as well. And the pace that we are moving at with this squad, it says everything about the job Arteta's done. So I think 100%. As discouraging as this weekend was, just for a bit of perspective, this was our first loss in 2024. It's the first time we have been trailing in the league in 2024. Like, we have had an incredible start to this year. It's just that we're up against a monolith that you cannot make mistakes. And like, that is, I know that's a state of play. You can't complain about it, but like, you have to still look and go, we've gone 11 unbeaten and drawn against Man City. We've won 10 and drawn 1. This one loss is not like some of the stuff I saw on Twitter yesterday. Arteta's taking his team as far as he can. Arteta needs to go. Like, every player needs to be shipped off. Like, you know, is Saka worth it? What did we overpay for Declan Rice? Guys. Let's just, like, you know, take a breath.
Take a deep breath.
And chill out. Because, like, I am still really enjoying this season and what Arteta is bringing to us. Like, and I said to you before, I'm more relaxed about it this year than I was last year. Because I know that we're here to stay. And I know that at some point, if it's not this year, it's coming along the line. It's not far away. I think the team gets the title within the next 5 years. And for me, I can just think about that and be like, we will get there. So we don't need to panic. Like, and anyway, we'll get a load of titles when City finally get punished. We'll pick up, like, well, one from last year, maybe one from this year. We'll see. But let's move on from there, I suppose. I think I'm finally done. My therapy session is over. Let's go to the part of the weekend I did enjoy. I really enjoyed this. It's a shame Ben can't make it. Newcastle 4, Tottenham Hotspur 0. Another mad couple of minutes where the whole game gets away from Spurs, and Van der Ven decides to go for the World Breakdancing Championships. I'm not sure what he was playing at. But Adam, talk us through this game. It was insane.
It was a strange game, to be fair. Newcastle didn't have much of the possession stats, but what they did on the ball was the most important thing, and they kind of carved out Spurs a number of times. It was just individual areas by Spurs ultimately that caused a lot of their goals. If we allude to, for example, the Isak's goal that he initially scores, and that's the frame around how the Ven is obviously landing himself in a very awkward position when he's trying to chase back at Isak. It all stems from that corner routine. Then you've got a Dodgy who kind of wins the ball, but then doesn't. Pedro Porro failing to kind of come back into that position as well. So it was a very strange kind of circumstances around that goal. But just generally, that was how the game panned out. I think, Spurs lost their discipline in many requests as well, because James Maddison, for a number of weeks, I felt like his discipline has been all over the place. I'm surprised personally. If I was a coach like Ange, I would have pulled him off.
I thought he could have been sent off.
I can't believe. Honestly. He should have been sent off in the previous game, which was what did he do then?
He punched someone in the stomach.
Punched out. Yeah, he punched out at Ryan Yates. It was from Nottingham Forest, wasn't it, in the box? And I think he gets away with it because of the reputation Ryan Yates has, more so than anything. But even this time, like I think he's lost it completely. And do you know what? I feel like he shouldn't be even considered for the playing for England. I mean, the way he's acting, because he's completely lost his head. He's completely lost his discipline, and that's the difference between like kind of being that kind of mature individual that can kind of ride these things out. A bit like Saka's had to deal with a lot of people kicking him out. He's actually grown with that. He's grown to mature with that, and he's actually risen above it. Whereas with Maddison, I feel like he has this moment, and it's not the first time. He did it while he was at Leicester, where
this
he had
was
like
always
little hissy
Maddison.
fits, right?
This was always like he was always hot and cold. He always was. He was streaky, and that's why no teams came in for him sooner. Like, and I know it's the relegation of Leicester is a huge factor in it as well, but like there was Arsenal were linked with him for years, United were linked with him, Chelsea were linked with him, but there was always that thing that made sure that clubs didn't really make that decision, right? And I think for Spurs, he's kind of perfect. They're a hot and cold team. He's a hot and cold player. Like, I think it's just a perfect match for me. I think obviously he's had injury issues, but yeah, his behavior on the pitch, I just thought if someone can make Bruno Guimaraes not look like a Mardas, then James Maddison really put him to shame in those stakes. I'll be honest. I thought the defense was fascinating, and it's something that I will keep beating the drum with Ange and with Spurs. You have to be pragmatic at some point. You just have to be. Like, we all love a manager like Bielsa, right? And we love that it's like, this cult of Bielsa. And but Bielsa hasn't won that much in his career, right? He's won a championship in Argentina, but you don't love Bielsa because of what he wins. You love Bielsa because of the football he plays. Sure. But that's the cost that he knows that he pays for his belief, right? He knows that I play this football because this is the way I believe football should be played, but I know it's not going to get me the trophies and the honors and whatever. I feel like with Ange, you're never going to win a championship playing that for like sticking so dogmatically to that system. Because we saw it with the Chelsea game, right? And yes, they were down to 9 men or whatever it was. Like the whole thing was a farce, but continuing to play that high line on the whole, it's suicide. And like
it is,
against a team like Newcastle with Isak and Gordon, who we're going to get onto as well, by the way, if you're continually pushing that high line, you're just playing into their hands. Like Isak and Gordon are going, okay, I can't wait. I'm just going to wait on the halfway line and just sprint the second my players on the ball. Like, and I think you have to be more pragmatic. And I think for Spurs fans, there must be a part of them going, okay, can we please just defend for like 10 minutes, shore up, get a foothold back in the game? Because this is exactly the same thing that what happened last year at St. James's Park. I know it was Christian Stellini, but like you have to concede a goal and just settle, shore things up.
Take a deep breath. Let's just keep the ball for 10 minutes. Yeah.
You can't just freaking fly out the blocks and then like it was 95 seconds between the goals, right? Like, and I find this is a trend that's happened under Ange a bit. And I think it's it's all beautiful and it's well and good and it's like honourable and whatever. But I think if you ever want to be a team that's competing with something, he's going to have to learn the lesson of you have to be more pragmatic and you have to come with a bit of a plan B for when games aren't going your way. Because Newcastle just were licking their lips at that. And I think to move on to Newcastle, because I can dig out Spurs forever, I quite happily would.
Yeah.
But I think for Newcastle, the amount of credit that has to go to Eddie Howe, because we've talked about on this pod, is he going to lose his job? This might be the last days of Howe. But despite all the injuries, they've still got 11 arguably first-team players out injured, right?
Yeah.
They've got like a 1 to 11 of positions of injured players. He has managed to turn this round, ride out the storm, and get them playing the football that we thought that we expected from them. Right now, obviously, Spurs helped with their defensive solidity.
Sure,
like Newcastle didn't really have much to do, but like, how much credit do we have to give to Eddie Howe? Because it's incredible to see them now. They're pushing for Europe again.
Yeah, we have to give them a huge amount of credit because of the way that he's kind of come through this period. I think because I think a lot of people didn't probably put a lot of trust into him, especially when times looked like it was easier for them to have made that decision and got rid of him. I think the fact of the injury crisis itself probably helped buy him some time, to be honest. But I also feel like, the team and the individuals, they've been bought into that philosophy. They've been bought into what Eddie Howe's tried to instill into them. And I think there's an element of there's that learning curve that he's demonstrated since his Bournemouth days, where he was a bit like Ange in that respect, where he was kind of implementing that free-flowing style of football. And in these kind of periods of games, I think they would have been found out. They would have lost like 4 or 5-0, for example. Here, you can see they've instilled a lot more fight in terms of the game. I go back to Eddie Howe when he had that kind of sabbatical where he left Bournemouth. He went to study around Europe, and one of those kind of guys was Diego Simeone at Atletico, who obviously stars himself in that kind of pragmatic, that style of fighting spirited football. But you can see that that's kind of slightly coming into that Newcastle side, whereby, and this is probably the moment that he wanted to instill that, is that, right, we haven't got the skillful players around them, but they're fighting for the ball. And when they are counter-attacking, they're doing it with directness. And you can see what the difference in players like having Isak as well as Gordon into your squad. Because if they're both injured, I think there's a different scenario in terms of the way that game plays out. But the fact that they're there, Isak's kind of develops as a player as well. I think you have to give credit to Howe in terms of how he's improved. Gordon as well. That was a bit of confidence. They I remember when he first turned out for Newcastle and they thought he was a sack of shit for that 30 million that they spent. He's now looking like well worth more than the 30 million that they've spent for him. And he's a future England international as it currently stands. He probably will be on that flight, I would anticipate, given the form that he's in. I think there's no one that I can think of that is playing in a better position on that left-hand side for England right now. So there's huge compliments to Eddie Howe and the way he's done it. And like you say, the circumstances, it's a bit kind of part squad at the moment. Jacob Murphy playing right back for you. That kind of
doing well,
wasn't it?
Doing well. I think Eddie Howe has raised the floor of these players that looked like championship players under Bruce and whoever else, if you know what I mean. Like, he's raised the floor so much more. I think it is very, very impressive. But Isak, I have to just say that he has a trademark finish that I know I'm not going to be the first to compare him to Thierry Henry, but his trademark finish is very Henry-esque, where he just lean and then curls it around the keeper into the far corner. It's just gorgeous. His first touch is amazing. As I love his energy. He looks.
He also sounds like he's come from North London anyway. So.
Sounds like he's from Peckham or something. It's insane.
He's not from Sweden. What's he talking about?
He's also he looks quite scrawny, but he's got a lot of strength. I was looking at his. It sounds weird, but I was looking at his legs when he was walking off after the interview, and I was like, they're quite skinny legs. They're not okay, it's unfair to compare everyone to Jack Grealish's calves, right? But his legs weren't that. But the strength he's got, and they be able to hold off defenders.
It's his upper strength, isn't it?
It's just it's incredible. I think what a player, and I think Look, he's been linked with Arsenal. I would take him at Arsenal tomorrow. I think Newcastle can quite happily demand more than 100 million for him because it's just the levels that he's got. But I think, honestly, he's got no interest in leaving Newcastle. He's part of a project there. If they qualify for Europe this year, which I think they will, if the current form continues, he'll absolutely be there next year. And the partnership that him and Gordon have is just a very, very promising thing. I think if they can sort out the right wing, so it's not like Almiron or whoever else, you get a bit more quality there. I think you've got a really, really promising front three there. And then obviously, well, as Tonuk says, cannot wait to see Tonali next season in the team. We kind of forget that he's there, right? And that he has, there is this bit of quality that's ready to come back into the midfield. We'll see how long it takes him to adjust to the football again and stuff. But we're all excited to see him back if he can delete the betting apps off his phone. We'll see. But let's leave that there, I suppose. Thank God Spurs lost this weekend. It was the only thing that kind of it pushed me through in terms of recording this weekend. And London Manager of the Year, Ange Postecoglou. Just going to leave that there. Finally, in the Premier League, before we go to Serie A, Burnley, frick me. Oh my God. We thought he'd pulled it off, right? He dropped James Trafford, brings in Muritz. One sentence, Adam, what the hell was that?
I mean, I've done things like that before, but not when I'm in goal, if that makes sense. Like that is, you have to feel for him, because the problem company's got is you've got someone like Trafford who's been shot of any confidence, and you've taken him out of the squad for Muric, and now Muric does that, and you're like, that was your opportunity to get a point or 3 points there potentially against Brighton, who Brighton are struggling this season.
They're just not good, are they, in the minute?
Yeah, they're not. I think they're going straight back down, I'm afraid. It's writing's been on the wall for the majority of this season, but yeah, you do have to feel sorry for the kid. I don't know what you can do going forward, because unfortunately it's just, if he'd stuck with him from the very beginning of this campaign, maybe this wouldn't have been a thing, would it? Yeah. They probably picked up a bit more points, but yeah, unfortunately, it's too little, too late, Rory. That's all I would say.
And he's in an impossible position now in terms of bring Trafford back, continue with Muric. Yeah. It's just like, it's a very, very. They put up more of a fight than we expected. Let's have that, right? Like we thought they were going to be below Sheffield United at one point, but no one's below them. 100%. But yeah, I think that's disappointing, isn't it? It's just why I felt really bad for him. I got a flashback to I'll try and be quick, but I played football in Spain once after a very, very, very big night out, and I didn't really want to play, and I was put in goal. And before we got into the game, I was like, "Yeah, I'm all right. Don't worry, I'm like half decent. Still a bit drunk, trying to big myself up." And passed the ball directly to their striker, and he looked at me, and he just kind of went, and then just passed it past me into the corner. And I was like, that was like the very first minute of the game. My mate looked at me and was like, I thought you were. I don't know. I'm just going to go home. Like, I just got a massive flashback. It was the same thing. The ball just rolled under my foot. And I was like, God. Yeah, I wanted the ground to swallow me up. One of my many terrible moments on the football pitch. But I think we're going to leave my therapy and the Premier League there for now. And we're going to move on to say, was there any other Premier League results? Not really. Man City battered Luton.
No, Brentford got an important 2-0 victory against Sheffield United. So that's massive. Man United conceding again, 2-2. That was quite funny.
How that was 2-2 is beyond me, but anyway.
West Ham losing to Fulham 2-0. That was a really good smash and grab by Fulham to an extent. So yeah.
And also, last thing, Morgan Gibbs-White absolutely boiling the piss of all fans. It is just that video, that picture. Have you seen the picture with him?
Yeah, of course I have. Yeah.
If you focus on each person's face, it's like
hatred.
It's like a Caravaggio. It's incredible, absolutely incredible. But speaking of Caravaggio, let's go to Italy. Look at that for a segue. And we're going to go to the big headline in Serie A this week. Free score in Sassuolo. They scored 2 in the last game, 3 in this game. Unfortunately, they conceded 2 in the last game and 3 in this game. But signs of life for Sassuolo before we get on to Milan, right?
Oh, 100%. To see Armando Loriente, the way he kind of was a bit more direct with his football, we haven't seen that all season from him, but he scores a double here, Pinamonte, turning his defender and scoring in the way that he did.
Nice
He normally
goal.
just tap-ins. He normally just does tap-ins and like easy goals, but that was something different from him. Like there does feel a bit more fight about Sassuolo in terms of their performances of late. And that's what they've needed, given that everyone around them has started to kind of build up this momentum. So that was really important for them. And I think, if anything, Rory, this highlights how poor Milan have been. Like, this is not just obviously in this game. They really struggled against Roma midweek in the Europa Cup as well. So Europa League, should I say. And they obviously have the return leg now going forward. And I think AC Milan season could be again one of those where it's one of those things with Pioli. He has these kind of little spits and spurts of like form, doesn't he? And at the moment, he's going through that really dreadful part of his kind of form at the moment because, no offense, but you shouldn't be losing to or dropping points to Sassuolo. Sassuolo aren't that. So, and when I was looking at the highlights as well, pretty much you got 3 sides that are full of Milan fans as well. Like this is how bad it is. Like you had all the fans around you. It's pretty much like a home tie, really, to be fair. So really dreadful from a Milan perspective because, I could point the figures at Pioli. The players on the pitch were terrible as well. If it wasn't for Rafael Leao at times, I think they struggle in this match. Even the substitutes that did come on, Noah Okafor looks like he had something about him, but just, defensively, they're so short. I mean, I don't understand why they had Kier on the pitch, personally. Kier was on for this. Malik Chow as well. Teo's been Teo as well. I mean, it was just poor from the beginning to the end, really, from a Milan perspective. And I mean, look, they're going to be in the top 4 regardless, so it doesn't really matter. I think the one thing that they've got in their favour is that they're going to be above Juventus. But the rumours are now, Rory, that it feels like Pioli will be staying at Milan. That is what I'm hearing now. So it's strange.
I think Pioli is kind of like he's kind of earned it. Like I will never know what I think of Pioli. I will just never know because I think we know that again this season they went through a bit of a slump and they were looking like they were fighting for top 4. But now he's really turned it around. Obviously, Juve have a whole different conversation, but they've overtaken Juve. They're the only team that they're not close to Inter, but they're the closest to Inter, I suppose. Like he has seen them through a difficult spell into a good spell. They're playing okay. They conceded 3 today. The defense is not great, right? Tomori was on the bench. There's a few fitness issues, whatever, but like they are playing great football, like entertaining football. There's a lot of young players there that he is getting a tune out of quite quickly. Like you have to say, like the players that have come in this season and hit the ground running, like Pulisic, Okafor, Reinders is hit and miss, but he has had some very, very good games. Like even like Musa when he's played, the players that have come in and done well in general. Like Loftus-Cheek coming straight away, coming to the league, being one of the best players in the league this year, arguably, right? Like, and I think so. There's a lot there where you can say, okay, well, the players are responding to him. He is developing them. If we can add a few more pieces, maybe he's the guy that can get us back there again. And I think maybe they might have had a word that Motta isn't that interested. Maybe they've heard that,
Possibly.
The guy that they want isn't going to be there. And you think, okay, well, do we stick or twist? Maybe we stick and see if with another year with these players and Inter maybe not being as rampant as they have been this year, maybe there's the next year they can get a title challenge. So I think it doesn't massively surprise me because I think he has turned their season around. It looked like it was only going one way.
Yeah, I think that Newcastle result was massive,
exactly,
wasn't it?
Exactly. And while they're still in the Europa League, obviously their performance wasn't great against Roma, but while they're still in that, I think there's still that kind of thing of like, well, we can end with a trophy, we can end in the Champions League, we can end with like whatever. I think, it doesn't massively surprise me really. But I did think Leao, because you mentioned him, he's really kicked on at some point. Like he woke up at some point and now he's really kind of back to his best and back to what we expect. But is the issue with Leao that he is just hot and cold? Like we don't know how long this run is going to last until he stops scoring again, right?
Or until he grows up. That is literally it. It feels like he's that petulant teenager that still doesn't know what mood he wants to be in. And it's frustrating because we know there's a really talented kid under that kind of persona, I think, sometimes, because he can be stroppy on his Instagram accounts, can't he? He can be a bit like, I just, strange behavior is probably the best way to describe it. But he's that petulant kid that, if you can get the best out of him, if you can give him the confidence which he demonstrated in that kind of title winning season for Milan, then you've got a hell of a talent on your hands. Like, and I think that's what Milan are kind of holding on to, that thought of, on his day, he can do those things. And maybe it's not this season, but they can build around him for next season. Because look, Giroud is likely to be going to LA by the look of things right now. It feels like it's pretty much confirmed now. So there will be some more funds from a wage perspective being spent into this squad. I don't think they've spent all of that money from Tonali, for example. There'll be more installments to come.
Yeah.
But they do need to reinvest in some key positions. For me, right back's a number one position. I think Mike Maignan, there's question marks whether he's going to be
It's his fitness. It's his fitness, isn't it?
There's his fitness. There's one element of it, but he hasn't been the strongest this season. And I think if, grand scheme of things, if someone comes in with an offer of 50 mil, I think they take it. I think they take it very long. They can reinvest that, go into somewhere in Serie A. They could go to the rivals like Atalanta, could get Carnesecchi.
Go and buy Falcone. Go and buy Falcone. Someone buy Falcone.
Falcone, I love him. But I think someone young who's got that kind of desire to maybe perform at a bigger stage, then I think that's what you need to do. But I think this is a problem. AC Milan need the right man to be trusted for that process. And I don't know. I still have my doubts about him. I personally, if I was Milan in charge of the hierarchy, I'd kind of maybe gamble and get Palladino from Monza. I think the job that he's done, you get someone young at the helm, someone that can inspire that team, and he proved over even this weekend against Bologna, the team that was more fancied against this Monza side, he can get results even if they haven't got the players against them. And look, you only look at what he's managed to assemble with Monza as well, the players that he's been able to kind of develop. And, Colombo is another example. He's a striker that's going to come back from his loan spell at Monza, could be the answer in terms of that filling the void for Giroud. So they've got some really talented players, haven't they, Milan, even at that kind of youth level that they could bring in to the next stage. I for life of me, can't understand why Adley doesn't get more of a game time. He was playing against, obviously, Sassuolo, but he needs consistency. That's the thing here, Rory.
I don't know what more he can do to get into that midfield, honestly. I think every time I see him, I'm like, you're a very, very, very good player. I really, really like him. But we know that Milan, it seems, I'm still hearing the Zirkzee rumours. So if you're getting Leao and Zirkzee and then just one more, that is an exciting thought. That's an exciting thought. For Sassuolo, look, this is, they're showing a bit of fight. They're, going down, swinging, but they're still very much, they're only 2 points away, right? So there's still plenty to play for.
There's a lot in it still.
3 draws in a row, so at least they're not losing. But I think, again, I was just reminded, Consigli is not a Serie A goalkeeper. There's a lot of defenders in that defense who are not Serie A defenders. I just think that is where the issue is. And even if you're scoring 3, like Leao's goal was fantastic, beautiful goal, but there was a few opportunities for the defender there to just stick a foot in and take him down, give away a free kick, whatever. But they overall just filled their pants and just let him score. So I think there's so many issues at Sassuolo. Obviously, that's where they are, why they are where they are. But Milan, disappointing. But hey, at least you didn't lose. You showed a bit of fight. You thought, we're not going to bloody lose here. And Sassuolo, they're their kryptonite. Sassuolo always get a result against Milan. So maybe we shouldn't have been surprised. But let's leave Milan and Sassuolo there. And let's go for... let's go to the other side of Milan, and let's talk about Inter.
Sure.
The equaliser shouldn't have stood, and nobody said anything. It was the most blatant handball I've seen.
Bizarre.
But nobody said anything.
So bizarre. Even the commentator kind of went, I think there's going to be a VAR on this because, we can see it on the screens. It's hit his arm, it's handball. So there's the guys who are taking the ball and putting it into that cloth bag because it goes to charity at the end of the season to get auctioned off. And nah, don't worry, they're going to replay this. And then referee just goes, carry on like nothing said. Like everyone's like, what the fuck's just happened here? But it was so bizarre. But at the same time, Rory, Inter have only got themselves to blame. Because
completely.
they seem to do this ever since that Atletico result has to go stem that far back. They've been struggling in games that they've dominated for about 60, 70 minutes, and then they just can't be asked for the rest of the game. They seem to, and Inzaghi persists with the same kind of substitutions. I know, like, this will make Francesco laugh when he's talking about this, because he's kind of used to Juve and Allegri having the same kind of substitutions. It feels the same with Simeone and Inzaghi at the moment, because he likes to bring on Alexis Sanchez to just give him his swan song to get his medal, right? But it feels like as soon as they do that, they seem to just drop off. They massively drop off in terms of performance. They can't be asked, and then they concede stupid goals like they did against Calgary. And Calgary were unlucky. They were full value for potentially getting all 3 points against this Inter squad, because between Lampadula and I've forgotten the guy that scored the equaliser now, Viola, that's it. Between the two, they combined superbly, because straight after the equaliser, they combined again. Lampadula gets a cross in, and Viola, all he has to do is header it into either corner, and he gets it on target, and that's the end of the game. That is 3-2, and it's straight into the arms of Sommer, which, again, it makes you wonder what is going on with this Inter squad. Have they just run out of energy since that kind of period? I don't know. It just feels like at the moment they're waiting for the end of the season. But I'm hoping this is probably the kick in the arse, because they need to get the job done against their rivals next weekend, right, Rory?
Well, this is like huge. It is like everyone I'm talking to in the city is like, it's next Monday, and this is the biggest game in possibly Milan history. It's like, I'm really glad. Like, the whole time I was like, wait, if it's still a draw, does it mean that Monday's still massive? Yes, okay, Monday's still massive. That's all I wanted. I didn't want Inter to win it last night. I wanted Inter to that stage be there on Monday, and thankfully that is the case. But I think, look, this is what happens when you're a team that isn't really challenged anymore. Like, that they know that they're going to win the league, right?
Yeah.
Like, if it doesn't happen on Monday, it will happen the week after. It's fine. Like, and I think, again, like you said, with the champion, you knocked out the Champions League, and then all of a sudden you're like, okay, well, you are just waiting for the season and for the party, and you're kind of treading water. Like, the Inter fans I'm talking to are like, can we just end the season now? Like, we can celebrate. Like, because we're just like, every game,
just
you're
bored
like,
now.
Hurry up. Like, imagine what the players are like, right? So I think we can definitely see that in performances. There is a lot more sloppiness at the back. The high line, like how high their line was for that Viola header, there was just no one frigging near him. Like, everyone was just bombing back. Like, it felt like there was just a bit more carelessness in the performance. And, like, kind of perfect for a team like Cagliari that has so much to play for at the moment. Like, you want to go up against a team that are like coasting a little bit and a little bit arrogant, maybe, and
100%.
a little bit careless. And like, Cagliari took full advantage, not full, half advantage. They should have taken more. But, like, I think, there's just a bit of carelessness coming into Inter's game now. I think, that being said, we do have to talk about the fact that Thuram got his first goal in 2 months, which sounds mental to say, but that is a big moment for him. Like, and you could see the relief of like, okay, right, and everyone was happy for him. It's like, right, okay, let's start again, go. Like, I thought Sanchez actually played pretty well when he came on. I know I'm massively biased, but I think he was decent. But I think for Cagliari, Lavumbu, again, just what a player. Just so direct, really good at carrying the ball. Had a shot, which I think he possibly could have played someone in rather than taking the shot. But he did trouble Sommer a little bit. And I think Cagliari, is Ranieri getting the fight out of them they need, you think? It feels like they're turning a corner a little bit.
This guy, I mean, just the fact that, he's getting Calgary to do these kind of performances, they've got no divine right, personally, to be at this stage in terms of where they currently sit in the table. They are absolutely demonstrating some fantastic performances. And I think a few podcasts back, I kind of mentioned about the fact that Calgary don't do very well away from home. They do very well in Sicily. obviously what they're doing right now is just displaying how much they've grown in confidence. And, we have to also remember that Ranieri didn't get much of a transfer budget when he got them up in terms of Serie A. So in that January transfer window, you got Gaetano from Napoli, you got Yerry Mina from Fiorentina. That was the main kind of signings, and Gaetano was the catalyst in terms of those performances initially. Yerry Mina was a beast at the back against, Inter. He bullied some of those attackers yesterday, and he pretty much made it known, and what he deserves. He deserves credit, and I'd be surprised if he's not a contender for manager of the season at the end of this if he keeps them up, because him alongside Marco Baroni, they deserve to be mentioned in the same breath as, say, someone like Simeone Inzaghi for what he's going to achieve this season as well, because them two, just incredible what they've managed to turn around with their respective clubs.
That's one loss in 8 games for Cagliari now. Like, when you think about the form that they were in and how kind of doomed they look, it's just incredible, really, absolutely incredible. And just shoring up, like you said, Yerry Mina's come in and really added a bit of experience, a bit of solidity at the back. And again, like we said, anyone going to Sardinia is not going to feel happy about going there. And there's a few of the teams around them that still need to go there. So I think, really incredible stuff from Ranieri, incredible. From a personal point of view, as I see Bari apparently looking like they might go down to Serie C, I'm like, please, why couldn't they have just held on for 2 more minutes? Not even that, 5 more seconds. But incredibly happy for Cagliari. They're doing very, very well. For Inter, I'm sure they'll be fine. Monday is going to be huge, and we will be there. Elsewhere in Italy, let's go for, just very quickly, Turin Derby, the worst in the league. The highlight of this game came before the game, when Irish MEP Mick Wallace stood up in his Torino shirt and in the best Irish accent in Italian said "Forza il Toro, Juve merda," and just sat down. Incredible. That was the best moment of this game, I think. I was watching.
He's got a bit of history, though, isn't he? He referred to managing an Irish side as a Serie B side in the Ireland League.
His team is, I need to get this right, is Wexford FC, and I think they are now in the Irish First League. And their badge is a combination of the Torino badge and it's like some random brand. It's a really mad badge,
right?
And he's like the president, or he's like a big kind of investor in this team. But they are now in the Irish First Division, and this is where it's all kind of come from. But they've got the ball on their badge. But yeah, that is basically
Steven Juric as a coach now. Basically, that's what.
One day, I'll tell you what, get him into the League of Ireland.
Can you imagine that?
I'd absolutely love it. But yeah, that was about all we've got to say about this game. I was half watching this game. I was in a bar with the missus, and all I was thinking was just Torino, just get one. Just get one. All you need is one. Juve are not scoring here.
This is your chance. This is your chance. Just do it.
You're watching your chance disappear. And then I think Sanabria had a chance that he blasted over the bar. Yeah. There was a few chances, but frig me, it's the worst derby in Italy, honestly. It's just nothing ever happens.
The most predictable one, but it didn't turn out to be predictable, did it?
Yeah, but I feel like it's either Juve win or it's 0-0. There's never like a Torino win. It's just, for God's sake, it must be heartbreaking.
The one thing that we can say, though, that is probably Juric's last Torino derby, because apparently his contract is not going to be extended. So let's wait and see what the summer brings. That's going to be great. I think that's another podcast topic, though, because there's going to be a few of these changes now going on.
He had an argument with wasn't it him fighting in the car park with the director of football before the season started?
Yes, it was. Yeah. This was last season. This season as well. This was this season as well, because he always moans about something or another, basically. Wow. If it's not one thing, it's another. And and I do feel for him, but then I kind of wonder, that relationship mustn't be easy, right? Having Juric yell at you.
Yeah, I think you don't go to Torino and expect massive financial backing. If you know what I mean, you go there and you're like, right, I'm going to have to do the best with what I've got. And that's kind of what he's done. I know that we were willing for them to please make a charge for Europe, but they've just not been able to do it. They're the most mid-table team ever, aren't they, Torino? But like, I feel like there's players there like Bellanova, or like there's loads of players that we've listed off that are
Duvan
having good
Zapata.
seasons. Zapata having a pretty decent season.
Yeah.
Like you've got like
Buongiorno. He's been a godsend for them this season.
Yeah. Vlasic having a very good season. Like there's a lot of players there where you think, okay, Juric is doing well. It'll be interesting to see who they get next. Just another, what do you reckon, Italiano or something, some other mid-table Italian.
Well, I think Italiano might be even more negative than Juric, right? So I think they actually go a bit more expansive this time. I think they will go more progressive again, but I think they'll go with someone that's a bit more grounded, perhaps compared to Juric, and maybe less vocal about
a bit
his
easier to work with.
hardmanship, right?
Maybe that's a move for Palladino. Maybe that is a move for Palladino, where it's a slight step up in terms of size of team. In terms of size,
I've got
of
a feeling Fiorentina's the team for him. Palladino would be a good fit for them. Personally.
I like that.
We'll see.
Well, it's going to be a big summer across Europe for managerial changes. It's going to be mental this year, and I think Serie A is going to be the epicenter of that as well. But let's leave the derby there. We covered that so well. And we're going to go, because I want to give myself a pat on the back a little bit. Khedira, I told you, you laughed at me, but who's laughing now? He can't stop scoring, the boy. One of them was absolutely gifted to him as the goalkeeper kind of bounced it off Sule and into his path. Yeah. But the other one, a fantastic header, very dangerous in the air is Khedira. The most important thing here was that it's against his parent club, and he definitely celebrated. Like both of the goals, he ran over and kissed the camera and dedicated it to his mum. Really, really fascinating, and only Napoli can concede 2 goals to a player.
Of course
they
could,
own, right?
Yeah, they were absolutely shocking. A team that feels like they're devoid of any confidence right now. You know, players all over the shop. Rachmani was terrible in this game, for example. Then you had brilliance of like Politano, who scores these epic goals, for example, and I feel sorry. Calzona is going to not be there by the end of the season. It's definitely seems like that's going to happen. I don't know what De Laurentiis has got plans, but he's throwing out rumors like he's having talks with Conte, which we think is bullshit. But then there's always going to be chats about him considering Italiano, and it sounds so bizarre at the moment because even the people that are in Napoli, they just don't feel that that's going to happen. They don't feel that this move is going to take off. So it does feel like there's a lot of smoke screens going on at the moment. But in terms of that team performance, terrible. Frosinone probably a bit gutted that they didn't take all 3 because Matteo Sule misses a penalty in this match as well. I think you just got to forget about this season ever happening. See what you can do with the players, because it feels inevitable that Osimhen's on his way out. There's constantly rumors about him accepting or the club at least accepting a bid from PSG. That looks inevitable that he potentially is going down there. And then, it's just what can you do with the rest of the team? Do you build the team around Kvaratskhelia, or who else needs to be moved on?
They need to offer him
Mario Rui as well was terrible in this match, by the way, getting sent off stupidly. So
lazy tackle, wasn't it? Really lazy tackle getting sent off in the end. I feel like with Kvaratskhelia, he's still like on a pretty I don't know, look, this isn't, I wish I had his wage, right? But he's on a pretty low wage compared to like his status in the squad, right? Yes, and I think De Laurentiis being De Laurentiis is trying to push this a little bit, and he might push it too far where Kvara's just like, you know what, fuck you, I'm off. So I think they've really got, I know that contract talks are ongoing, and they're
always ongoing, I think.
But they've been ongoing for a while, right? It feels like if he's your flagship player, because Osimhen will go to PSG, I think that's, as you said, I think that's pretty much done now, which is a frightening thought. But anyway, if he is your flagship player, you've got to pay him like that. You just have to. You can't try and scrimp and save on this, because you will not get a player like him again. You won't get a player like him again. No. And however you spend that money, the sporting director who found him is now sodded off to Juventus. So you've got you got to keep hold of this guy, right? So I feel like he's really playing poker a little bit here, and it's kind of not poker, Russian roulette, even the really dangerous one. And I feel like he could lose, if you know what I mean. So I think it's a really interesting case. I thought Napoli were just as you said, absolutely all over the shop. But what do you expect from a team that's had 5 managers, whatever it is this year? It's just it just nothing works, nothing makes sense. And yeah, Osimhen is kind of scoring despite everything else, I think, which just shows how good he is.
It's just been a bonfire of a season. Napoli's season has kind of seen it all, hasn't it? From the very top end when Spalletti left to, don't forget we had the racism element of their social media.
We had that whole TikTok thing.
We had all of that take place, Osimhen, Zielinski being isolated out of the squad. In between that, we've had
Rudy Garcia,
the managers, Rudy Garcia, Walter Mazzari, Calzona.
Mazzari! I forgot about Mazzari completely. Incredible.
How can you forget about Mazzari? Come on.
I know. I apologize, Walter. I apologize. But yeah, just incredible season. For Frosinone, they are capable of putting up a fight and making life difficult for people. But in general, they've done it at home. I was impressed that they managed to do it away, right? I feel like their home form has really been their strength. But here, they weren't afraid of Napoli at all. They properly went for it.
They gave for it. This is the thing, though. Frosinone have demonstrated this season that they are a very good side. And up until I think it was about 2 months ago, they demonstrated even on the away games that they can actually take on the big sides as well. They were just a bit unlucky on occasions. I seem to remember against Juventus, they gave them a hell of a shock when they took a goal lead against them. With the players like Bresciani, for example, there's some really talented players in that squad. But the problem has been that they just concede far too much. And I think it's interesting for Di Francesco, who obviously, I don't know what his future as a coach is down there, because if he keeps them up, do you stay with him for the next season? Do you give him because, Sule is going to be gone. Chedira, you mentioned, is only on loan from Napoli, for example. So that's
Reina
2 players
as well is going to go. Doesn't he go back to Real Madrid? Reina, I think.
Yeah, look, Turati, who's the goalkeeper as well, he'll be gone as well because he's only on loan from, I want to say it's from Sassuolo, actually.
Yeah, I think it is Sassuolo.
If I'm mistaken. So, there's a few players there that you straight away have to think about potentially bringing. They obviously have a good relationship with Juventus, with the next gen squad as well, for example. So do they feed into that? It would not surprise me if Di Francesco is kept on, but then he's replaced very quickly into the second half of the season if they struggle. Because
it feels like that kind of... Feels like that kind of situation of Forest when they got promoted, right? All their players were on loan and they were like, oh, fuck, we need to go. Obviously, they went, right? You didn't need to sign 50 players, but there'll be a lot of work to do at that club next year, regardless of where they find themselves. I think they could still keep themselves out of it. I think they've got a lot more fight than a few other teams, a lot more quality than a few other teams around them. Just they've got that bit more between their teeth. And if Khedira's there, banging them in like he does do. I think they've always got a chance. He's just so physically demanding. You never know what he's going to do. Let's have it right.
He's that unpredictable.
I always remember his World Cup cameo where he came on.
Of course.
Came on for 30 seconds, tackled someone, then got sent off. I can't remember what it was.
It was something like that.
It kind of sums him up quite a lot. But in the air, he's absolutely
deadly
in the air, and his finishing 60% of the time, I'm going to say, being very generous, is very, very deadly. So yeah, really, really happy for him. Just wish he could go back to Bari for just the next 3 weeks and keep them in the league. That would be quite nice. But finally, elsewhere in Serie A, Lazio, helped by Felipe Anderson double to waltz past Salernitana. Really, there was no real jeopardy in that game at any point. Lecce with a late 1-0 win over Empoli Sansone in the 89th minute. Empoli was super unlucky here. They had a goal disallowed. It was
but did you see the circumstances?
No, this was a weird one, right? Talk us through it.
So basically, Empoli's goalkeeper kind of comes out for ball, but the ball kind of moves outside of the box. So he's outside of his technical area, and he somehow manages to handball it. But then, like when you pretend you haven't handballed it, you drag it back, and you go, nothing happened here, just carry on. That's what he did. And I saw it. I was like, that's going to be a call back for a free kick. But referee just carries on. So then before you know it, it kind of goes to the other end of the pitch, and then Empoli score. And then VAR suddenly happens, and like, well, there's no VAR because of what happened at that end. It's to do with what happened with the goalkeeper. But it's all bizarre because you think, right, surely it shouldn't have taken them that long.
We've moved on to the next phase or whatever.
Exactly. This is why David Nicola was going absolutely apeshit at the fourth official, going, "What the fuck's happened here? We've gone past this phase of play, and you're calling it back for that moment." So, yeah, unfortunately, Empoli will feel a slightly bit aggrieved, but I would say on the balance of schemes, it shouldn't have even got that far. It shouldn't have got that far.
It is the right decision. It's the right decision.
Yes.
It's just, it took him half an hour to get there. Yeah, I was watching it this morning and I was like, wait, what the hell has just happened here? Because I saw the Empoli goal, but then the highlight just went back to the Empoli goalkeeper. And I was like, wait, my head hurts. Have Empoli got a penalty now? What's going on? Like, I couldn't figure it out. It was
bizarre.
Very strange.
So bizarre.
But yeah, Lecce did get the goal in the 89th minute. That basically, Lecce will be fine, I think. They've got enough quality and enough good form, kind of, to keep themselves out of it. They're still 5 points ahead of the relegation zone. So unlucky for Empoli there. Bologna and Monza drew 0-0. Adam, the most fascinating game of the weekend, right?
It's the most dreadful match ever. I was speaking to you offline how my friend Craig from across the road came to join me because I'd been speaking up about Bologna in the last few weeks. He wanted to see how good they were, and he was served an absolute dreadful dross from Bologna. Bologna, unfortunately, just weren't clinical in the final third, and when they did get into the final third, between the likes of Frela and Orsolini, for example, they just skied their efforts, or it went wide. Orsolini was unlucky in the first half. Di Gregorio for Monza had to pull off some incredible saves, it has to be said. But it was very much a back-to-the-walls effort from Monza, who I think did quite well in the grand scheme of things. We talk about how, with Motta, how he diversifies his tactics, sometimes there's a 7 midfield approach, what he ended up was almost like a Sam Allardyce style football. So if you'd seen it in the Premier League, we'd be slating it and saying, what the hell is this dinosaur football? But what Palladino kind of did was counteract the amount of players that were coming into the box. So in that grand scheme of things, I think he did really well, considering he didn't necessarily have the quality of players on his side. When it came to the attacking kind of or counterattacks aspect from a Monza perspective, they really did struggle. They really couldn't get out of their box at times. It was pretty much all Bologna. I did feel that they kind of lacked a bit of control in that midfield as well. Lewis Ferguson was a bit gung-ho, and unfortunately there's some bad news that came out today about him with his ACL, so that rules him out for the rest of the season, and also won't see him till the beginning of 2025, apparently, that's got to be a hell of an injury.
That's his Euros.
That's it. We were talking about it because Craig was destined, or he was
Scottish,
desperate to see what he would, because he said, "Look, Scotland full of these midfielders at the moment." He wanted to see Lewis Ferguson in it. But yeah, he's not going to see it, and that I feel sorry for Lewis Ferguson because he could have been in Champions League, could have been in Champions League with Bologna. So. Yeah, and I don't know what this does for Bologna as well. Does this destabilize them? Because I think he's the engine to a degree in that midfield. So, they were missing Calafiori from Saturday's result anyway, as it was. But, I think from a midfield perspective, that's a massive miss for them. So, yeah, let's see what happens from this kind of moment onwards. But I think that's going to be vital for their kind of campaign, because if they lose, say, Xerxes in this summer, then there's some massive rebuilding needed. But yeah, dreadful match overall.
Yeah. Well, this is back-to-back 0-0s for Bologna now. They kind of lost their scoring boots a little bit. So yeah, not having Ferguson there isn't going to help. We've seen how clutch he's been this year with assisting and scoring. So yeah, Bologna need to find their scoring boots again, because Roma are creeping up. We should have really opened the Serie A section with this. Fantastic to see Evan and Dicker back and good, all well. Everything looks like he could be back soon. No major issues. There is, without coming across all Joey Barton, there is a bit of a thing about players collapsing on the pitch a lot recently. It's happening quite a lot. I don't think it's.
Should we just get the meme out of Matt Letizia with that pose as well? But anyway.
But it is happening a lot, and I think there needs to be something looked into.
Yeah, of
But
course.
great to see Evan and Dick are back. Obviously, that game's going to be replayed. That none of that matters as long as Evan is
And
fine.
Udinese with a draw as well, right?
So... they were drawing. They were drawing.
Yeah, they were drawing.
It looked like they were going to get a draw. And elsewhere, Fiorentina drew 1-1 with Genoa this evening. And, well, the story really, Atalanta were 2-0 up, but Verona have dragged them back to 2-2 with 2 goals in 4 minutes. The title race remains alive. Verona are still there. Don't let me down, boys. I had you as surviving comfortably. Don't let me down. That leaves Udinese, Verona, and Empoli all on 28 points. Frosinone on 27, Sassuolo on 26. But Udinese, of course, with a game in hand to be played. That is all of the Serie A action. I don't know if that's my connection or yours.
Probably
Hello?
mine, but yes, all good.
Let's continue. We need to very quickly go to Champions League preview as... Well, it's a bloody big week, isn't it? Tuesday evening, we have the second legs of Dortmund versus Atletico Madrid, currently 2-1 to Atletico. And we have Barcelona hosting PSG, currently 3-2 to Barcelona. 2 very, very intriguing games. Atletico in the first leg, I feel like they really should have put their foot on the gas and got more than 2 in the first half while they had the chance. Dortmund managed to keep the tie alive, so great for them. Difficult place to go to, Dortmund. Atletico are not the typical Atletico that we're used to, right? They're trying to play more expansive. They're not as shithousery. Do you think they're going to revert to type? What do we think, Adam?
They will. They 100% will. I'm not fancying Dortmund, though, because Dortmund, I've seen them a few times. They don't look great. But then in the Champions League, they seem to have this persona. They're almost like Jekyll and Hyde when it comes to this stage. So it's unpredictable, right? I would refer to Atletico not being great away from home in the Champions League. But this is what they're good at. They're good at getting to this kind of stage of the competition and being shithousery selves. So they've got enough quality, I would say, to proceed to the next stage. But let's see. Like you say, it's not going to be an easy tie, but I expect Atletico to progress.
I'm going to predict Dortmund are winning 1-0 in the 85th minute and Atletico score in the 86th to make it 1-1, and that means they go through. So Atletico go through with a draw. That's how I see this going, and they will shithouse their entire way through it. Elsewhere, as I said, Barcelona PSG. This one's wide open. Pedri really with one of the best passes I've ever seen with his first touch as he came onto the pitch in Paris. I think Barcelona have got enough to get this done, though. I was impressed. I'm surprised Xavi's going. Honestly, it feels like they're not as bad as I expected them to be.
Well, I think Xavi probably has learned from his experience there that actually it's not necessarily all rosy behind the scenes, shall we say. And despite this kind of reassurance from Laporta, I think he's starting to realize that maybe he's just too old for this shit and probably would like to benefit from a more stable environment. But yeah, like you, I think what PSG performed in that first game showed a lot. There's a lot of question marks about Donnarumma and the command of this area. I think there's huge question marks for the Italian national squad. But generally, I thought this was a really assured performance by Barcelona. I think Lewandowski had his best game of the season, personally, I thought, in this particular game. But the kids was the most impressive bit. They just... every one of them, they just seem so mature. I mean, Lamine Yamal, I thought wasn't his better game. However, he still looked threatening on the counter-attack. Rafinha looks incredible. You know, there's just so many great performances. I just think at home, they do it and they progress to the next stage. So, yeah, I think this could be a 3-0, 3-1 result, potentially.
I think, there's nothing that stops Kabasi. Sorry, I wanted to get his name right. Kabasi. Just a regen from FM that just comes out and is incredible. I was like, for fuck's sake, who's this guy? He just looked unbelievable. He's 17 or some shit, dominating at the back as centre-back. Just unbelievable. I think Barcelona get through this fairly easily, to be honest. I think PSG, that was one of the worst performances I've ever seen from Mbappe as well. Oh, terrible. My God. He was absolutely atrocious. And then Wednesday night, Tommy's coming over to watch it. So Arsenal, do not let us down, please. We got Bayern 2, Arsenal 2 at the Allianz. And of course, Man City 3, Real Madrid 3 at the Etihad. Let's start with Bayern Arsenal. This is bloody massive. I think very, very quickly, Bayern are going to have to come out and attack us. They're at home. They can't play the counter-attacking sit-back football that they did at the Emirates, which worked against us really well. So I think the fact that they have to come out a bit more, they have to be the protagonist, maybe gives us more of a chance. I still expect we'll go out. I will never head to the Allianz expecting us to get a result. That's just not going to happen. I think our best bet is arguably to take it to penalties and just hope we send the same 5 forward, and bring Maitland-Niles back if you saw his penalty.
Yes, I saw that, yeah.
I think that might be our only hope. But how do you see this game going?
I think it actually goes all the way to pens. I genuinely think it's going to be quite a tight game because Bayern Munich have demonstrated in the league that they've been really poor in recent games. I think it was this weekend they really struggled. I can't remember their face now, but they really did struggle this weekend against a team that they were supposed to have beaten quite easily. It was at home, wasn't it? If I'm not mistaken. But yeah, I think this goes all the way, Rory. Sorry to shoot your nerves. I'm sure you'll be really screwing about that, especially as we record the pod the next day. But yeah, unfortunately for you, mate, goes all the way, and I think Bayern will go through because Harry Kane will bloody score that penalty.
Well, it's inevitable. Harry Kane penalty against Arsenal is just fucking inevitable. Anyway, and then we have Manchester City versus Real Madrid. I think these might be the greatest matchups. Honestly, these games are just the level of quality in these games is unreal. I cannot call this one. I just cannot call it. I think we've talked about Man City being get-outable. Real Madrid are get-outable, but the attacking talent that both of these teams have, on either of these teams' day, they could blow the other one away. I just can't. Yeah. I wish that Arsenal and Bayern weren't playing at the same time because I really want to watch City Real Madrid. How do you see this one going?
I think whoever wins this actually will win the Champions League. Yeah. That's how tight this is going to be. I think this is going to be tighter than last year's game at the Etihad because obviously Man City steamrolled Real Madrid. Real Madrid were just shocked, completely shocked. But what you have, I suppose, difference is that maturity of certain players in that squad for that match. But you've also got the likes of Jude being there. You know, I think that is quite a big player to contend with. And I think they did quite well. I think the difference is as well, Haaland's not firing on all cylinders. That game previously, we had Jack Grealish do a great job on that left-hand side for Man City. He did have a good first leg, it has to be said. But yeah, I think there's going to be very much reliance on Bernardo Silva and Foden for this match to pull the string, shall we say. Obviously, Rodri is going to be there. And it wouldn't surprise me if De Bruyne is used sparingly for this match. So I don't know whether he starts or whether he comes on. That's the interesting dilemma that Pep has to make. But yeah, I think this could go into extra time, personally. I don't think it gets sold in full time.
All I can say is if Arsenal do get through, please bring me Real Madrid. I know we're not going to beat them. I just don't want to have to face 2 legs against Man City, even though I just can't. Yeah. I'd much rather lose to Real Madrid. I can't do it playing City twice. In the Cool Kids Club, in the Europa League, English and Italian interest, some of these ties are finished. Liverpool have to go to Bergamo 3-0 down. I think we both agree that Atalanta should get through this one.
Should do.
Leverkusen 2, West Ham 0. West Ham was so close to getting a result there, but I think Leverkusen fresh off winning the league. West Ham's only hope is that they've been on the piss non-stop since, but I think Xabi Alonso might have been a bit more serious with it, and I think at home they should get this job done. They're still unbeaten in all competitions, remember. They're not going to want to let that one slip. And the Italian affair, Roma will host Milan. Mancini getting the goal in the last game. Roma really should have scored more in this game. I thought Milan were really, really poor. Roma created plenty of chances. Are they going to regret not putting some of those away?
No, I think they do the job. I think they do the job because De Rossi's proved this season, since he's taken over at Roma, that he can do well in these kind of expected ties, but also the ties that he's probably most tested in. He seems to have a better grapple hand of the tactics itself. You saw it against De Zerbi, against Brighton, for example, in the previous round. I think he really has matured as a manager since those Spal days. And yeah, he's demonstrated to me that actually I think he gets one over Pioli. And as well as that, I think the form that you can see both sides are in, I think you just, there's an air of confidence about Roma. There's something about it right now. So I think Roma get the job done. Personally,
I hope you're right. I really hope you're right. I think at home, it's really, it's huge that it's in Rome for the second leg, right? Absolutely massive.
Yeah.
And the other game is Benfica are currently 2-1 up against Marseille. We'll see what happens. I don't know enough about either of those teams beyond the fact that Marseille are a bin fire, as they always are. And finally, in the even cooler kids club in the Conference League, Fiorentina, Victoria Pilsen. For some reason, I subjected myself to this game last Thursday.
Why?
I don't know. I thought, you know what it was? I thought, I better watch the Italian team. For the pod, I better know what happened. But then I saw Olympiacos Fenerbahce was 3-2, and I thought, well, I've missed all the goals there. I regret all my life decisions. But do you think Fiorentina at home can get the job done? They should get it done, right?
They should do. This is Italiano, though. Yeah, I think that they'll probably win like 2-1 personally. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I'm not holding out too much hopes because this is Italiano and something will go wrong, badly wrong. Yeah. And if we're finishing on that point, by the way, Chelsea have just thrashed Everton 6-0. So
fucked, aren't they? They're absolutely fucked. Cole Palmer, 4 goals. Yeah, Everton are fucked. But elsewhere in the Conference League, last game, Lille, Aston Villa. Now, this is a really interesting one. When it was 2-0, I thought Aston Villa have got the job done. Lille pull one back, going to Lille, hot atmosphere, decent side, big test for Villa, fresh off a huge win away at the Emirates, though.
Massive test, but if there's a man that can do it, who's got the pedigree, it's Unai Emery. He knows what to do in these situations. He knows what he's got to set up. He'll rotate his squad. Look, there's a reason potentially Bailey didn't play the full game here as well. So, look, I think he's going to be astute. He knows what he's got to do. I think he'll get it drilled into the players' minds what they've got to do. It would not surprise me if they get a result. But it might not be the game that we all anticipate it in terms of like end-to-end potential. Yeah. I think it's going to be a very much backs against the wall. He did it with Villarreal. He'll do the same here.
We hope so. I hope to see Villa go all the way, to be honest. I really, really hope they do.
That'd be nice.
It would be fantastic to see that team pick up some silverware. Just incredible. Something to show for this amazing season that they're having. A nice trophy would be a good way to finish it. I think they're definitely the favourites in the competition, aren't they? But guys, we've talked enough about football. We've made up for being away. We've gone over an hour and a half. My God, you lucky buggers. We've made up for our little hiatus. No more hiatuses, we promise, guys. But thank you for joining us, as always. And we will be back on Friday with our wrap-up of the Champions League. Please, Arsenal, just for the love of God, be good. And previewing the Premier League and Serie A weekends. Huge weekend in Serie A, potentially. Yes. Hit the like and subscribe button down here. Leave a comment if you agree or disagree with anything we said. Adam, anything to say before I let these people enjoy what's left of Monday evening?
Have a great evening, and we'll see you guys for the future live stream. Hopefully, we might even watch the match. Rory, might watch it on the Monday. Who knows? We'll make that decision. We'll make that decision.
We could try and do it. As always, follow us on Twitter at Italian Anglo Pod, on Instagram at Anglo-Italian Pod. And you can follow us on TikTok at Anglo-Italian Pod. And we will see you next time, guys. We're going to go. Ciao. Arrivederci.
Ciao.
Alla prossima.